Hey, good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all here. Welcome to everyone joining online as well. This is the second day of our 5-day course. And what I'm going to be doing is starting with meditation with you guys, like I always do, starting with chanting. Then I'll be guiding you. There'll be a period of time of quietness where we're all just meditating. Then we'll come out of that with some more chanting. And then that's where I'll start today's topic, which is the Eightfold Path. This is the path for all humans to enlightenment. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha. This is what's going to guide you to that enlightened mental state where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. That's going to take us all the way through the entire morning. And of course, we have our mid-morning break. We're going to take a lunch break. And then when we come back, I'm going to teach you meditation, the ins and outs of meditation, how to understand this, how to get the most benefit out of it, why you're actually doing it, and how it fits in to the overall teachings of the Buddha. So if you guys would like to join for the meditation, you're more than welcome to. Remember, we have the chanting sheets over there on the cabinet. I'm going to start with the chanting, and you guys are welcome to join in if you like. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Emakewa Potang Mahakewanang Aphiwate Ami Savakato Emahakewata Tammo Namang Namasami Supatipano Emahakewato Savakasangho Sanghang Namami Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso emahakewa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vichacharanang sammuno Sakato rokavitu Anutero purisa Dhamma sati satatawa manusrang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath, not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind has moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมดามังนามาสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมรัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมรัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมรัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตวามนุสรังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, good morning to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here. Welcome to everyone joining online as well. You know, this is a really excellent day to come to the temple to learn, because I'm going to be sharing with you guys the core central teaching of the Buddha of the Eightfold Path. This is the path to enlightenment. So in terms of getting to this enlightened mental state where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, and you no longer experience anger, sadness, frustration, and all those other feelings, it's this particular teaching that you need to really focus on as you're first getting started. You're going to need to learn this, and then you're going to need to revisit it multiple times in order to really soak it into the mind and really practice it closely. I'm going to walk you through the entire Eightfold Path using the original words of the Buddha. Because whenever you're learning the teachings of the Buddha, you would like to study with his original words. I know that sounds pretty obvious, but there's very few people in the world that actually study with the original words of the Buddha. They're really just handing things down from person to person to person. And because of this, it lacks the clarity that you really need in order to be able to get to enlightenment. So you guys are going to be able to see the original words of the Buddha. And I'm going to walk you through this in a way that you can learn it, examine and investigate it. You can reflect on it to verify if it's true or false. And then you can practice it, integrating it into your day-to-day life. And that's where you're going to see the real changes. Because remember, none of the teachings of the Buddha are based in belief. You need to be able to get to wisdom. So don't believe anything that I share with you related to this teaching. And I'm going to show you guys how to do this, learn, reflect, and practice as I walk you through each step. One of the ways you might think about this Eightfold Path is that if you had a speaker system and you had we're trying to get a better and better quality sound out of these speakers, you might have these 8 individual dials that you're kind of tweaking these 8 dials in order to get a better and better quality sound out of the speakers. Well, the same thing is true about your mind. There's these 8 individual dials that you can tweak in your life, and you'll get a better and better performing mind. So I'm going to walk you through each of these: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This is organized into the wisdom section, the moral conduct section, and the mental discipline section. It's going to take us the entire morning to be able to explore this teaching, and we're going to take a mid-morning break to give you guys a chance to kind of rest the minds, rest your body a little bit, get a snack and stuff like that. But I'm going to just gradually walk you through this. And it's so important, as I share, that you don't believe any of it. So I'm going to help you guys to be able to see what the Buddha taught on this important topic. It all starts with right view. What right view is here in the words of the Buddha. You can see he says, "In what, monks, is right view?" This is his words. "It is, monks, the wisdom of discontentedness, the wisdom of the cause of discontentedness, the wisdom of the elimination of discontentedness, and the wisdom of the way of practice leading to the elimination of discontentedness. This is called right view." So what he's doing here in right view as part of the Eightfold Path is he's pointing to another teaching. He's actually pointing to a teaching called the Four Noble Truths. That's actually what is right view. So underneath of this line right here, I put the top section of the Four Noble Truths so that you can see that, yes, there's a connection here, because the Eightfold Path is the core central teaching of the Buddha, but everything else plugs into it. So he's not going to repeat the entire Four Noble Truths here, because the Four Noble Truths goes on from here. There's a much more detail beyond just what you're seeing here. But what I've done here is I've put this little top section of the Four Noble Truths so you can build confidence that what he's talking about in the Eightfold Path as right view is definitely the Four Noble Truths. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you the Four Noble Truths in a way that I can walk you through it to be able to learn, reflect, and practice. Okay? In order to understand the Four Noble Truths, you need to first understand the three universal truths. These are like building blocks to help you to be able to understand the Four Noble Truths. We call them the three universal truths and the Four Noble Truths because the Buddha knew that they were true. I know that they're true, and other people know that they're true, but you need to know that they're true, and that's where you're going to actually get the benefit. So I'll show you how this works. So let me help you with the intellectual learning of this first universal truth. This is the universal truth of impermanence. This is where the Buddha is helping you to understand the world around you and what you're experiencing in this world. What he's describing to you is that the world is impermanent, that things are constantly changing. Anything that you can see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, it is all impermanent, meaning it's constantly changing. There's things called conditioned objects. Conditioned objects will arise, they will change, and they will fade away because they're based on some condition. So that means they're going to arise, they're going to change, and they're going to fade away. These are all impermanent. And everything that you can see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, it is all impermanent. Then there's things called unconditioned objects. Unconditioned objects do not arise, they do not change, and they do not fade away. They are permanent. So enlightenment itself is an unconditioned mental state that is permanent. The natural laws of existence that the Buddha taught, those are unconditioned. They don't change. That's why his teachings are just as applicable today as they were 2,500 years ago, because he's describing these natural laws, and those natural laws haven't changed. They are unconditioned. They don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. But everything else in the world, in this entire material world, is all impermanent. Okay, so now you don't believe that. That's like 2 or 3 minutes of intellectual understanding that what I'm sharing with you is that the world around you is impermanent. Anything you can see, hear, smell, taste, anything that comes in contact with the body or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind. So that's the intellectual part. But now you move it into reflection, because you've got to verify if what am I saying, is it true or it's false? Because you're in the world, and through your own direct experience, you can reflect on this to determine if it's true or false. Here's how you do it. Take things that you're familiar with, like this human body. Ask yourself, is this body permanent, meaning it never changes, or is this body impermanent, meaning that it's constantly changing? So what would you say? Is this body permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? Ever since the egg and sperm came together, it's been constantly changing. You've been getting taller. Sometimes we get shorter. Sometimes we get bigger. Sometimes we get smaller, right? When we were first born, we didn't have teeth. and then our teeth grew in. That's change. But then those teeth fell out, right? And then we had more teeth grow in, and now you get cavities and things like this. You get pimples, you get wrinkles, you get moles, you start losing your hair, all these different things. Your body is constantly changing. What about your relationships? If your relationships are permanent, that means you've had all the same people in your life your entire life. If your relationships are impermanent, then that means people are coming and going in and out of your life. So what would you say? Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? They're impermanent, right? They're constantly changing. What about the weather? Is the weather permanent or impermanent? The fact of weather, is weather permanent or is it impermanent? The weather, so this world is not permanent, right? This world is constantly changing, right? This world's constantly changing, right? So sometimes it's sunny, sometimes it's raining, sometimes it's snowing. It's different all the time. It's always weathering. Is this world permanent? Okay. You need to be able to know for sure. You need to be able to look at it and see for yourself, right? You can't just assume, you can't just guess. You need to get to wisdom where you can see for yourself that the world is constantly changing, right? Let me ask you this. What about your bank account? Is your bank account permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? It's constantly changing, right? There were certain people here in the class yesterday, and now there's different people that are here, right? That's impermanence. So I could go on and on and on like this with you, but you need to do this for yourself. You need to be able to see that the world is constantly changing, right? Like the wood planks on the floor of the temple. Some of them are longer, some of them are shorter, some of them are one color, some of them are a different color, right? You look at the tree, you see green leaves in the tree, you see brown leaves on the ground. This is impermanence. You're walking down the street on the sidewalk and you see a crack in the sidewalk. This is impermanence. This is constant change. Okay, so you're going to need to go through this and be able to see this for yourself. It might take you several hours, several days, several weeks for you to go around the world and soak into your mind that the world is impermanent, because this is a building block that's going to help you when we get to the Four Noble Truths. Okay. Then there's the universal truth of discontentedness. Some people call this suffering. If you've studied the teachings of the Buddha in other places, I don't use this word because it's not the best word to describe what the Buddha was using here. I'm going to explain to you guys what this is, and then I'm going to circle back and help you understand why I don't use the word suffering. So the word in the original text that the Buddha was documented as teaching this, the word dukkha is being used. This translates to discontent, discontented, or discontentedness. What the Buddha is describing is the unenlightened mind and what the unenlightened mind experiences. There's three feelings that the unenlightened mind experiences: pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. These are called conditioned feelings, that based on some condition, you will then experience a feeling. Okay, so there's pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, or euphoria. There's painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. Very painful to experience those. Then there's neither painful nor pleasant feelings. I put boredom and loneliness here, but some people say that's quite painful for them. So you could change that to painful if you like. But shyness is a good example. It's not painful. It's not pleasant. It's neither painful nor pleasant. Or maybe if you were on public transportation and somebody that you didn't know came in and sat really, really close to you and your body was touching their body, you might say it's not painful, it's not pleasant. Maybe the mind's kind of uncomfortable or dissatisfied in that situation. That's neither painful nor pleasant. Okay, so these are the three feelings that the unenlightened mind experiences. These are called conditioned feelings. So what you need to do is you need to independently verify this, because you know that your mind is unenlightened. Ask yourself, is this what you experience? Are there any feelings that you experience that don't fit into one of these three categories? And if there is, when we get to the question period, let me know and we can talk about it. Because what the Buddha is describing here is how the unenlightened mind forms conditioned feelings. It bases its feelings on some condition. So for example, if you look outside and you see the sun and you get really happy and excited about that, that's a conditioned feeling. That's conditioned happiness. Based on the condition that there's the sun present, now the mind will experience happiness. But the problem with that type of happiness is that it's temporary because it's conditioned. It arises, it changes, and it fades away. Because if you base your happiness on the sun, that means when the sun goes away, you're not happy anymore. So when it rains, you're sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. If you get really happy when your bank account balance is up here, that means when it goes down here, you'll get sad or frustrated because you're basing your feelings on some impermanent object, right? This is why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness, is because the mind is basing its feelings on some condition. Right? So in the unenlightened state, you'll wake up in the morning, you get really happy and excited when it's sunny outside. Maybe there's a hiking trail that you would like to go on and you get really excited about going on this hiking trail. And then you'll go take a shower and you'll come out and you'll see it's raining and now you'll be sad and frustrated. An enlightened being doesn't experience this. They're beyond that. An enlightened being is already happy when they wake up in the morning. They have unconditioned happiness. There doesn't need to be any condition met in order for the mind to experience happiness. So they were already happy before they even saw it's sunny outside. And now when they go take a shower and they come out and they see it's raining, they can maintain their happiness. It's like, well, I guess I'm not going hiking today. I guess I'll stay home. I guess I'll go, maybe read a book or go to the mall, or maybe I'll invite my friends over. We can cook some food. They didn't base their happiness on the sun. So when the sun is gone, they can maintain their happiness. It's still there because it's unconditioned. So what the Buddha is teaching you to do is how to get to unconditioned happiness, where there doesn't need to be any condition met. Because with conditional happiness, this is actually unsatisfactory. You're actually shrinking your ability to be happy because your mind's kind of like, if my mom and dad do this, if my brothers and sisters do this, if my boss does this, if I have this much money in my bank account, if the weather is this, if I have this kind of house and this kind of car, then I'll be happy, right? So you're kind of shrinking your ability to be happy because all these conditions have to be met in order for you to be happy, right? So that's not what you're interested in. So the Buddha's teaching you how to get beyond that. So the reason why I use the word discontented, or discontentedness is because you need to see these conditioned pleasant feelings as just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones, right? If you allow your mind to get conditional happiness, that means the painful feelings are waiting right around the corner. So if you got so happy and excited with a brand new job, like it's the perfect title, the perfect company, the perfect salary, the perfect office, and you got so happy and excited about that based on that condition, that means when that changes, you're not going to be happy anymore. So when they lay you off in 3 years because the company's going out of business, you're going to be angry. You're going to be sad or frustrated because this job is not permanent. It's eventually going to come to an end. So if you allow your mind to get happy and excited because of this brand new job, that means when it changes, your mind's going to end up in the painful feelings. So you need to be able to train your mind, yes, to be happy when you're functioning in this job, but you can also be happy with a different job too. And you can also be happy with this job or that job. Or maybe even if you're unemployed for 6 months or a year, you can be happy there too, right? So you're going to need to train your mind to not base its inner feelings on some condition. So the reason why I use the word discontented, or discontentedness is because the word suffering doesn't explain the 3 feelings that the Buddha is talking about here. It only explains the painful feelings. Like if your boss came in and said, hey, you're doing a really great job. I'm going to give you $100,000 a year more in your paycheck. And you got really happy and excited about that. Would you say you were suffering? Probably not, right? Or if that person came and sat close to you on public transportation and your body was touching their body, would you say you were suffering in that situation? Probably not. right? So if we use the word suffering, you're only understanding 33% of what the Buddha was talking about, which is the painful feelings. You're missing 66% of his teachings. And how could you ever get to his goal of enlightenment if you're missing 66% of his teachings? So a better way to understand this universal truth is that the mind is discontent, it's discontented, or experiencing discontentedness, where the mind is all shaken up. It's unsteady, it's uncalm. The mind's happy and excited, then it's angry and frustrated, then it's bored and lonely, then it's embarrassed, then it's disappointed. The mind's going up and down and up and down. The mind is shaken up. That's what this one is talking about. Okay, so this is the mind experiencing discontentedness. And this is what the unenlightened mind experiences. These are conditioned feelings. Then there's something called the universal truth of non-self. This is actually the solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. If you remember back to yesterday, I was teaching you the 10 fetters. There's those 10 individual pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind. And that's what you're working to uproot and eliminate out of the mind. This is the solution to the very first fetter. Remember, the fetter is that shackle and chain and the ball around your ankle. These are the pollutions that need to be uprooted in order to experience enlightenment. The very first fetter is called personal existence view. This is one of the problems that's in the mind. So I'm going to explain this to you first, and then I'm going to circle back and explain to you the universal truth of non-self, because that's the solution for personal existence view. Remember, personal existence view is where the mind is clinging to your body or the mind, thinking that this is who you are as a person, clinging to your self-image, clinging to your self-identity, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And you can only be happy if you're being perceived that way. Where if you looked in the mirror, for example, and you saw a pimple or a wrinkle or a mole or a gray hair, or you started losing your hair and you were shaken up by that, that's your personal existence view. Clinging to this body, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way, and only being comfortable when you're being perceived that way. Or if you spilled something on your clothing and you were in a social situation, you spilled like spaghetti sauce or chocolate ice cream, and you were embarrassed by that, that's your personal existence view. Okay? Then there's the self-identity part, where your mind will cling to your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation. You can cling to any number of these things as who you think you are. Like say you were in a job, like I am a police officer, and your mind was clinging to that as your identity. Well, as long as you're doing that work, you'll feel quite comfortable. You'll feel quite good. But then let's just say you get injured or you retire or you get fired, and now you're not doing that work anymore. Let's just say that you're driving a taxi and now you don't feel whole. You feel like less of a person because your mind is identifying with I am a police officer, but yet you're doing this work as a taxi driver, right? So you would like to get rid of any of this identity that the mind is clinging to. Maybe you have this identity of I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, I am a husband, I'm a wife. And now, as long as you're in a relationship, you feel good. There's a certain amount of comfort in that. But then when you guys break up and you're single, the mind doesn't identify with I am single. And you might have felt like you wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship. But that doesn't solve the problem because this personal existence view is still there. So what the universal truth of non-self is this is helping you to understand that there is no self, that this body nor this mind is you. It's not who you are as a person. But your mind's going to be clinging to this, wanting others to perceive you in a certain way. And you can only feel comfortable if you're being perceived that way. So you need to get to a point where you realize non-self, that you realize that this body is not you, this mind is not you, and not clinging to it, longing, yearning for others to perceive you in a certain way. So there's certain training that you need in order to be able to do that. And there's other programs that I share where we go into that more detail, how to actually train your mind to realize non-self. Sometimes when I talk about this early like this, when someone's first getting started on the path, they understand this. But other times people have a lot of trouble to understand this because we've spent so much time in our life accumulating the idea that this body or this mind is who you are as a person. Ever since we were born, we were given a name. I don't know all of your names, but my name is David, right? This is a label that we were given at birth. And now we start assigning personality and character and all these other things of who we think we are as a person. So you can get to a point where you understand, for example, that this body was born on a certain land, but your mind doesn't have to identify with, I am American, right? I can understand this body was born on a land that people refer to as America, but my mind doesn't have to adopt that identity that I am American. Or I can understand that I'm fulfilling the role of a Buddhist teacher, but I don't have to adopt the identity of I am a Buddhist teacher. Because if I did, when somebody says something positive about that, I get so happy and excited because they're talking about me. And that's what the mind will think. But then when someone says something degrading or disparaging about Buddhist teachers, then I'd be frustrated and I'd be angry because I think they're talking about me. So by shedding this out of the mind, you can just be peaceful and joyful all the time because you don't identify with that as who you are as a person. So I'm going to help you guys to see how to independently verify that there is no self, but just understand that there's more training here that you're going to need beyond just this. This is just a little bit of an introduction to it. So ask yourself this, right? Because we went from learning, now we're going to move to reflection. Ask yourself, think about yourself when you were a child, when you were a teenager, early adulthood, and then now. Think about who you thought you were as a person, your personality and character, your image of who you thought you were. Was it exactly the same through those 4 phases of your life, or was it constantly changing? What would you say? It's been changing, right? You haven't viewed yourself in the same way through all those 4 phases of your life, right? This is where you can see that there's no permanent self. Let me ask you this. If your arm was amputated and you only have one hand and one arm, are you less of a person? Jen shaking her head no. Shaking your head no. You're not less of a person, right? You have less use of a hand and arm, but you're not less of a person. So this is where you can see intellectually, you understand that this body is not you. Because otherwise you would answer that differently. You would say, yeah, there's less body, so there's less me, so therefore I'm less of a person. But very rarely does anybody ever answer it that way, right? Because if you think that this body is you, intellectually you understand that it's not you. But in the heat of the moment, with personal existence view, your mind gets confused. Because if someone says to you, wow, you're so handsome, you're so beautiful, that shirt really brings out the colors of your eyes, you might get really happy and excited thinking they're talking about you, right? But then it's only a matter of time before somebody says, where did you get that haircut? Are you going outside looking like that? And now you're angry and frustrated, right? So if you allow your mind to grab on to this body, thinking that this is who you are, intellectually you understand this body is not you. But in the heat of the moment, when somebody says something about this body, you get angry or frustrated or irritated. That's your personal existence view. That's the confusion that the mind has. Here's a third way that you can verify that there is no self. Point to yourself. Where are you? Can you point to yourself? Where are you? Maybe everybody's realized non-self already. So a lot of times people will point here, right? Or they'll point here. So if somebody pointed here and they said, I am here, you've got to be able to see what you're pointing to. You're pointing to a shirt. Ask yourself, is that who you are? That shirt that you're wearing? Like if we took off our shirt and we held it up and pointed to it, is that who you are? Your shirt? That's not you, right? So we throw that away. That's not you. Where are you? And someone might point again. Well, now you're pointing to skin. So ask yourself, is that who you are? The skin that you've got. That skin, is that you? Is that who you are as a person? If we ripped off the skin and held it up and pointed to it, is that you? That's not you either, right? So we throw that away. So now, where are you? And someone might point again. And now you've got ribs, you've got muscle tissue, you've got organs, you've got fluid. None of these bits and pieces and parts are you, but the mind's going to cling to this as who you think you are as a person, right? So the Buddha is helping you to be able to see that there is no you, so that you can let go of this clinging, and now you can get to peace and you can get to joy. Because no matter what somebody says, you can be completely peaceful, because you can't teach 8 billion people in the world to do things a certain way. All you can do is train your own mind. So if somebody says, wow, you're so beautiful, you're so handsome. Oh, thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate that. But you're not so excited. And then someone says, oh, you're the most ugly person I've ever seen. Okay. And then you just keep on walking, right? No need to spend time with that person. But you don't have to be angry. You don't have to be frustrated, right? It's just, that's their opinion. Just keep on walking, right? No big deal, right? So I'm going to stop here and see if you guys have questions on any of these 3 universal truths, because these are building blocks to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. When we get to the Four Noble Truths, you'll be able to understand the problem that the Buddha discovered in the mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. But it's based on these building blocks. So do you guys have any questions on these? No questions? Okay, let me check online here. Okay, I don't see any questions there either. Okay, so one more little building block, and then we can explore the Four Noble Truths. So there's something called craving, desire, attachment, wants, and expectations. This is the mind longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of its affection, wanting and expecting things to be a certain way. The mind thinks that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. So the mind will chase it and chase it and chase it and chase it. It's almost like an unquenchable thirst that the mind thinks something external is going to provide lasting satisfaction. So it will chase after this thing. If you've ever been in the mall and you saw a brand new pair of shoes and you were like, oh, brand new pair of shoes. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to get those on my feet. Oh, it's going to be so great. That's your longing, yearning. That's your craving, thinking something external is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. Or maybe it was a new mobile phone, or a new toy, or some kind of video game, or something like this. Your mind was just longing, yearning for that thing, and it just can't wait to get your hands on that thing. If I can just get that thing. The craving, desire, attachment isn't the object itself. It's the way that the mind longs and yearns for it. It pulls in the direction of the objects of its affection. Do you guys know what I'm talking about here? Have you experienced this? Yeah? Your mind pulling towards things? Okay, so now you guys have what you need to understand the Four Noble Truths. Okay, and this is where you can have a real breakthrough to being able to understand what's causing all your anger and frustration and all these other discontent feelings. Because in the unenlightened state, you'll firmly believe that it's other people who are causing this for you, where in reality, it's your own mind that's causing this. So the first noble truth is explaining the problem that each person is experiencing. Everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness, those conditioned feelings. Pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. The mind's happy and excited, but then it's angry and frustrated, and then it's embarrassed and lonely, then it's disappointed, then it's feeling guilt and shame and fear. You know, there's pleasantness here and there. There's calmness and stillness in the mind every once in a while, but it's only a matter of time before the unenlightened mind becomes frustrated or agitated about something, right? The mind's going up and down and up and down. This is the problem that the unenlightened mind has, that it can't be stable, it can't be steady. And when your mind is all shaken up like that, you can't make wise decisions. So this is the problem that each unenlightened being is experiencing. The second noble truth is explaining the cause of that problem. The discontentedness is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent. So I'm going to say that a few times, and I'm going to give you some examples. The pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant, the discontentedness is caused by craving, desire, attachment, the mind's longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of its affection, because it's craving for things to be permanent, when in reality, everything around you is impermanent and constantly changing. So for example, think about maybe a boyfriend or girlfriend that you got together with. And some of you might not have had a boyfriend or girlfriend yet, but just think about if you've gotten together with a boyfriend or girlfriend and now you guys broke up. right? When you guys first got together, you were so happy and excited. But then when you guys broke up, you might have been angry or sad or frustrated or lonely or bored or missing this person. This wasn't your love that was causing it. It was the mind holding on and craving permanence. As long as the mind was getting what it wanted and what it expected, it was getting pleasant feelings. But when the mind doesn't get what it wants and what it expects, it experiences painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant feelings. So as long as you guys were together, there was a certain amount of comfort there in the mind. But when you experienced this impermanence, when you experienced this change, the mind didn't like it, because it was holding on and craving permanence. And the fact is that this relationship was always impermanent ever since the beginning. But the mind just didn't understand that because of its lack of wisdom. Even if you guys were together for the rest of your life, you guys were going to die. And at some point, you weren't going to be in a relationship with this person any longer. And as long as you're holding on and craving permanence, when your mind's not getting what it wants, it will experience discontentedness. Or if you're experiencing the pleasant feelings, that's because the mind's getting its craving fulfilled. You can see this if you've had someone close to you that has died, that as long as they're alive, the mind's getting what it wants. So you're happy. Grandma, grandpa's alive. Mom and dad, brothers and sisters, yay. But then as soon as they die, the mind's experiencing this impermanence, and it doesn't like that. That's one of the ways to say this. One of the ways to say it is that the mind craves permanence. Another way to say it is that the mind does not like impermanence. It doesn't like change, when things are changing in your life. That's why if you look at your life, in the times that you were struggling and having the most difficulties, it's when things were changing. When you were changing your living location, when you were changing your relationships, when you were changing your job and occupation, because the mind doesn't like change in the unenlightened state. You might have seen this if you went to a wedding. Maybe you've seen somebody get married, and maybe you or the other people at the wedding were crying and grieving. This isn't love, because if someone's starting a life with a new partner, it's like wonderful. They're getting married. They're going off into the world with someone else. Excellent, right? They're making a new life for themselves. But no, mom and dad are crying. Brothers and sisters, grandma, grandpa, different people are crying and grieving because the mind's holding on and craving permanence. And in that moment, they're realizing, oh my gosh, my brother is not permanent. He's going off with somebody else. Or my son or my daughter is not permanent. They're going off with someone else. And the mind's holding on. If you've ever seen children get dropped off at school, or if you can remember getting dropped off at school the very first time, your parents might have been crying, or you might have been crying and grieving, right? It's not love that's causing that. Right? Because if your child's going to school, this is wonderful. They're getting an education. Wow, they're going off to school. But no, when parents drop their kids off at school, sometimes they cry, right? And the kids might be crying because they're holding on and craving permanence. The mind can only be happy when it gets what it wants, which is I want to be with mom and dad, and I want my child to be with me. And then when there's this separation, you're going off to school, there's this grief, right? There's this sadness, there's this crying. Right? Let me give you an example that doesn't involve relationships. You might be able to see this a bit better. Let's just say you bought a brand new car and you've been saving up for this brand new car for a really long time. And you're so excited to get this brand new car. And you drive the car off the parking lot of the dealership. And now you park it at a store and you go inside. And when you come out, there's a scratch on your car. You might be so angry or frustrated. It's not the scratch that's causing that. And it's not the person who scratched your car. That's not what's causing the anger and frustration. What's causing the anger and frustration is that the mind's craving permanence. The mind wants this car to be permanently beautiful. And it's just not possible, right? Now, we're not talking about what's wise or unwise, because obviously when we walk through a parking lot, we aspire not to scratch anybody's car. But the fact is that this car is going to get a scratch. It's only a matter of time. The paint's going to fade. The tires are going to need to be changed. The upholstery is going to get ripped and torn. It's going to happen, right? And if your mind is craving permanence, when you experience impermanence, the mind doesn't like it. So now it's angry or frustrated and your mind's all shaken up, right? So I could give you story after story, example after example to help you guys see this. But you guys need to be able to see it for yourself. You need to look at your own life and see this truth, because you can't believe what it is that I'm sharing with you. So I would like to invite you to reflect on this by taking a recent situation where you've been angry or sad or frustrated. Now, at that time, you might have been pushing people away. The mind becomes unskillful. You might have been thinking that it's other people. You might have been blaming others for the feelings that you were experiencing. You might have pushed people away. You might have been bitter and harsh and hostile to them, or you might have put expectations on people and tried to pressure them to do things your way. But I'd like you to look at this with fresh eyes. Look at it with this new wisdom. You might have been angry or frustrated this morning or yesterday or last week. What was it that your mind wanted? What were you longing, yearning for? And if you would have gotten it, you would have been happy. But because your mind didn't get what it wanted, you experienced anger or sadness or frustration, right? If you can see this for yourself, you can have a real breakthrough. Because what I'm teaching you is that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. It's not the outside world. And if you can break through to be able to see this truth, this is where things get really good for you. Because now you can actually fix it. Because as long as you think it's other people that are causing you to be angry, you'll keep pushing people away. You'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile to them, and you'll put expectations on them and try to pressure them and control them to do things your way. Every single time you've ever been angry your entire life, it was always coming from your own mind. That doesn't mean the other person wasn't doing something unwise, because they could have been doing something unwise, but your mind was craving for them to do it this way. Right? And you can only be happy if they do it this way. So ever since we were born, it's the same thing. We were inside the womb. We were inside our mother's stomach, hanging out, having a good old time. We had food coming in on the umbilical cord. We had the whole place to ourselves, unless you were a twin or something like that. You had the whole place to yourself, just having a good old time in there. Next thing you know, you get pushed out into the world. Or you have surgery and you come out into the world right away. We're upset right away because we were craving permanence. We thought that inside the womb, we thought that was permanent. And then we come out and we start crying right away. We don't like it, right? Same thing when we were a little kid. We might have wanted ice cream. We might have went to our parents and said, Mommy and Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? And they said, sure, here's your chocolate and ice cream. And we're so happy and excited about that. Thank you, Mommy. You're so great. You're so wonderful. Right? You're the best mommy ever, the best daddy ever. And then the second day comes around and we're like, Mommy and Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? Sure, here you go. Here's your chocolate and ice cream. And we're so happy and excited about that, right? We think Mommy and Daddy are so great and so wonderful. But then the third day comes around and we say, Mommy and Daddy, can I have chocolate and ice cream? And they say, no, you can't. You're so mean. You're the worst Mommy and Daddy ever, right? That's our own mind, because we're craving that chocolate and ice cream. We can only be happy if we get what we want and what we expect in the unenlightened state. So you need to be able to understand that it's your mind itself that's causing these feelings. So if you have difficulty seeing this for yourself, let me know and I will help you. There's been plenty of students over the years that needed help with this to be able to see this truth for themselves. I'll just give you one example from that. I had a student one time contact me and they said they would like to talk to me because they knew that I taught that it was their own mind that was causing these feelings. And then when they were experiencing frustration, they thought for sure it was their wife. They said, David, I need to talk to you. I said, okay, what's going on? They said, I know you teach that it's my own mind that's causing these feelings, but I'm sure it's my wife and I need to talk to you. And I said, okay, sure. What's going on? They said, well, I went to work the other day and my house looked beautiful. And then when I came home, my wife had this craft project all over the house. And when I walked in, I got angry. I got frustrated. How did I cause that? I wasn't even there. She's the one who messed up the house. Didn't she cause me to be angry? And I said, no, it was your own mind. You were craving permanence. That when you went to work, your house looked a certain way. And you expected it to look exactly the same way when you came home. But when you came home, it just changed. You just experienced change. It was just impermanence. That's all it was, right? So when it goes from sun to rain, if somebody's angry or frustrated, you can see it's not other people that are causing that, because there's no other person involved. It just goes from sun to rain. The only thing that's happened here is change. That's it. Or if your bank account balance goes from here to here, the only thing that's happened is change. That's it. So if you're experiencing feelings and emotions, it's coming from your own mind. There's no way for somebody to insert a feeling into your mind. It's physically impossible, right? So you need to be able to see this for yourself. And if you have trouble, let me know, because I will help you. We can use any example from your life or anything that you've experienced in your day-to-day life, because I'm sure you've been in knockdown, drag-out arguments with people, trying to adamantly convince them to stop doing what they're doing, or else you're going to continue to get angry and frustrated, right? But all along, it's your own mind. And that doesn't mean they're not doing something unwise, because they could surely be doing something unwise, but your mind's craving permanence and wanting and expecting people to do things a certain way. And you can only be happy if they do it that way. So the mind in the unenlightened state is trying to create this little bubble, right? And it wants everybody to do things this way. And if somebody's not doing things your way, you will tend to push them out of your bubble. Or you'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile to them, trying to fear them into doing it your way. Or you'll put expectations on them and try to pressure them to do it your way. This is the mind craving permanence. Okay? Well, once you understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, this is very empowering. It's not about guilt or shame. It's not about who's to blame or who's at fault. It's just about seeing true reality, because this is very empowering. Because if it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, that means you can fix it. Whereas if it's everyone else that's causing these feelings, you can never fix it, because you can't train 8 billion people to do things a certain way. So in the third noble truth, the Buddha explains to you that there is a solution here, that the elimination of discontentedness is possible by eliminating craving, desire, attachment. If you eliminate the cause, if you understand in the second noble truth that the cause of discontentedness is craving, desire, attachment, if you understand that that's the cause, well, if you eliminate the cause, you'll eliminate the effect. So if you can eliminate that longing, yearning, and chasing after the objects of your affection, you can actually eliminate your discontentedness. But sometimes when I say that, people say, hold on a second, if I'm not chasing after the objects of my affection, aren't I going to swing all the way to the other side where I'm dull and lethargic and lazy? Well, you might, but that's not what the Buddha is teaching you. He's teaching you to come to the middle, where you can gradually pursue your goals, objectives, or interests through wise decision making, right? So you can eliminate this discontentedness by eliminating the craving, desire, attachment. Essentially, craving, desire, attachment is the mind's holding on, and it's craving permanence. And you can only be happy when you get what you want. So the third noble truth is explaining to you that you need to train your mind to let go. Right? You need to let go. You can verify this too, because think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend that you broke up with. At some point, your mind let go. When you first broke up, you were angry, you were sad, you were frustrated, you were lonely or bored or missing this person. But at some point, your mind let go. That's where you were like, you know what? If he wants to be with someone else, so be it. And you let go. And that's where your peace and your joy came back. Or you were like, you know what? If she wants to live in a different part of the world, so be it. And you let go. And that's where your peace and your joy came back, right? So when you let go, that's where your peace and joy is. But the mind doesn't know how to do that. That's where the fourth noble truth comes in. The path to eliminating discontentedness is the Eightfold Path. This is the complete perfect plan that's going to guide you in how to eliminate your discontentedness by training your mind to let go. And it starts with right view, because you need to start with right view. If you didn't understand what was causing these feelings, how could you ever eliminate them? So the Buddha wisely makes right view the very first step to focus you on what is the real cause of this problem. The real cause of the problem is in your own mind. Because if you continue to think that it's other people that are causing you to experience anger and frustration, why would you do anything to improve your life and improve what you experience? It's everybody else that's causing you to be angry and frustrated. They should be here, not you, right? So the very first step of the Eightfold Path is that your mind is causing this itself. So you need to focus on that. So right view is to understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. So what I encourage you to do to practice right view is now and forever, Whenever you're discontent, look inward. Start looking at your own mind, your own cravings, desires, attachments, because what your mind's going to want to do is it's going to want to blame other people for the feelings that you have. That's called wrong view. So let's just say you're checking in at an airport and you think that you're going to be leaving in 1 hour, and they inform you and they say, hey, I'm so sorry, sir. I'm sorry, ma'am. Your flight doesn't take off for 3 hours. Your flight's delayed. You can't check in yet. Well, if you notice anger and frustration coming up there, it's not the airline company that's causing that. That's the mind craving permanence. You want every single airplane to take off on time, especially the ones you're on, right? So instead of sitting in the waiting area, being disgruntled and angry and blaming the airline company and think that everybody's out to get you, instead, start looking inward. What am I craving here? What am I longing, yearning? I want to get on that airplane to get to Thailand. I can't wait to get that mango and sticky rice that they have. Oh boy, that's going to taste really good. Or I can't wait to get to those massages, or maybe play with the elephants, or whatever it is, right? Your mind's longing, yearning for something, because otherwise you would just understand, well, of course the plane's delayed. There's going to be weather issues. There's going to be maintenance issues. There's going to be crew issues. If you travel enough, you're going to meet with delays in your airplane, right? It's only a matter of time before your plane's delayed, right? Because of impermanence. So now you can just be peaceful. You can be like, well, okay, I'll just wait 3 hours. No big deal, right? This is just the way life is, that the world is impermanent, right? So you can start looking inward. This is what right view is to start looking inward at your own cravings, desires, attachments. So I'm going to pause here and see if you guys have any questions on this, because sometimes students would like help here. Do you guys have any questions on these Four Noble Truths and how it's your own mind that's causing these feelings based in craving, desire, attachment? No questions? Okay. So now I'm going to continue on. Each one of these don't take the same amount of time to teach it to you. It's just this first one. It takes a little bit of time. So this next one is called right intention. Some people translate this as right thinking or right thought. There's 3 things here that the Buddha is teaching. In what monks is right intention? The intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, the intention of harmlessness. This, monks, is called right intention. So he's talking about 3 things: renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. What renunciation is you need to have the willingness and the interest to be able to let go of your false ideas, your false beliefs, your false opinions and views, and your unwholesomeness. Because right now, if you experience anger, sadness, frustration, all these other feelings, there's certain false beliefs that your mind has. There's a certain lack of wisdom that your mind currently has. And if you continue to hold on to that, you'll never cultivate the wisdom that you need to overcome those challenges and actually experience enlightenment. So you need to be willing to renunciate that, meaning let it go. One of the very first false beliefs, false opinions, and false views that you need to let go of is that other people are causing you to be angry and sad and frustrated. That your mind will hold on to that and cling to that. But you need to have the intention or the thinking or the thought that you're willing to renunciate that. So you're not getting rid of your false beliefs by bringing in new beliefs. Instead, what you're doing is you're bringing in wisdom. When you're independently verifying the teachings of the Buddha and you're bringing in this wisdom and you see it conflicts with things that you've believed your entire life, you need to be willing to renunciate that and let that go. So that's why now you've just been given some wisdom, or you've been, at least been shared the wisdom that you can now cultivate, that your mind is causing these feelings itself. And when you look at that, you're like, oh my gosh, this is true. I've been believing all along that it's other people that are causing this, but it's my own mind. Oh my gosh. So you need to renunciate that false belief, false opinion, and false view. Essentially keep an open mind, right? And you also need to renunciate your unwholesomeness. There's a certain amount of unwholesome moral conduct that each unenlightened being is engaged in. You need to be willing to let that go. If you're not willing to let that go and you keep conducting yourself in that way, you're going to keep experiencing unwholesome results. So you need to renunciate your false ideas, false beliefs, and false views. You need to let that go, and you need to let go of your unwholesome moral conduct. And this is the first part of right intention or right thinking or right thought. Then there's the intention of non-ill will. What ill will is the animosity, the bitterness, the anger, the hatred, the ill will. But whenever you see a double negative like this in English, that's a positive. So when you see non-ill will, that means goodwill. You need to cultivate the intention or the thinking or the thought of goodwill towards all beings, that you have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. This is loving kindness. So this is the opposite of inner hate and anger. You need to cultivate this intention or thinking or thought of goodwill towards all beings. Then you need to have the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm. Because if, as long as you put out harm, harm will come back to you. Now, you just heard me share with the Four Noble Truths that you cause your own discontentedness. Everybody else is causing their own discontentedness too. So if your parents or your siblings or other people are blaming you for their anger, you're not causing their anger. They are causing it themselves. So you can't cause somebody else to be discontent, but you can cause them harm. Causing someone harm is to cause harm to their physical body, their material possessions, or their reputation. If you cause harm to someone's physical body, their material possessions, or their reputation, you're putting out harm, and harm's going to come back to you. So how could you ever get to peace and joy if you constantly have this harm that's coming back to you? So you would like to get to a point where you're not causing harm to other beings, causing harm to their physical body, their material possessions, or their reputation. And that starts with an intention or thinking or thought of harmlessness. Okay, where you need to have this intention of you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. Okay, so these are the first two factors of the Eightfold Path: right view and right intention. So just a little summary here, and then I'll open up to questions. The right view is the Four Noble Truths. Understanding the problem that you're experiencing is discontentedness. The cause of that problem is craving, desire, attachment, the mind longing, yearning. The elimination of that is to eliminate your craving, desire, attachment, and the path forward is the Eightfold Path. That's what's going to completely fix this. So essentially what the Buddha is teaching you is to accept responsibility for your own feelings, your own intentions, your speech, and your actions. Because oftentimes what we do is we blame that stuff on other people in the unenlightened state because of the mind's lack of wisdom. But you would like to accept responsibility for what you're experiencing. That's what's going to help you to now be able to transform it. Then there's right intention. This is the intention of renunciation, where you're willing to let go of your false ideas, false beliefs, and false opinions and views, and let go of your unwholesomeness, your unwholesome moral conduct. You need to be willing to let that go. Then there's the intention of non-ill will, where you have the thinking or the thought of goodwill towards all beings, a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. Then there's the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. Understanding that anytime you cause harm, harm is going to come back to you. So you'd like to eliminate harm to people's physical body, to their material possessions, or their reputation. So any questions here on these first two steps? No questions? Okay, so this forms the wisdom section of the Eightfold Path. That's the foundation. When we come back from our break, it's now 10:25. When we come back from our break at 10:45, which is 20 minutes from now, I'm going to pick this up with the moral conduct, helping you guys to understand that and all the rest of the path. So enjoy your break, and I'll see you guys afterwards. Okay? Thank you guys so much. Okay, welcome back to you guys. I'm going to continue on through the Eightfold Path here, helping you guys to continue to learn about this, because now you've built up a foundation and starting to understand the wisdom section. Everything else is built upon this, right? Because the very first part is that you understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, right? That's right view. And then you understand right intention, where you have this intention or thinking of thoughts, that this is building up your wisdom. Now we're going to move into this moral conduct section, which is where the Buddha helps you understand right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Because in the unenlightened state, there's a certain amount of lack of wisdom that the mind has about how to interact in the world in a wise way. Whenever you see things from the Buddha on moral conduct, it's important to understand that he's not teaching you rules or commandments. That's not what it is. Instead, he's teaching you this natural law of karma. Now, some people call this karma. You might have heard that word. That's from the Sanskrit language. The original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language, so the word karma is being used. If this translated to just one English word, I would use it because it'd be easier for everyone, but unfortunately it doesn't, so I still need to use this word karma. What it means is cause and effect, or action and result, the results of your decisions. Whenever you make decisions wisely, you will experience wholesome karma, or wholesome results. And when you make decisions unwisely, you're going to experience unwholesome karma, or unwholesome results. So what the Buddha is teaching you with this moral conduct section are what are the wise decisions based in speech, actions, and your livelihood that is going to produce wholesome karma for you. Because in order to get to enlightenment, you need to experience the point where you're able to wisely interact in the world without causing harm to others. Because with a lack of wisdom in this natural law, you'll tend to make unwise decisions and you'll experience unwholesome results coming back to you. And what the unenlightened mind does with its lack of wisdom is it'll blame that on other people instead of realizing that it's your own decisions that are leading to that. So you would like to understand that there's this cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. It's your life, it's your decisions, and it's your results. And you will experience the results of whatever decisions you make. So now the Buddha is going to help you to be able to see the wise decisions around speech, actions, and livelihood. So here's right speech. Okay. So the Buddha says, in what, monks, is right speech? Refraining from lying, refraining from slander, refraining from harsh speech, refraining from frivolous speech. This is called right speech. So this is where the Buddha is giving you 4 things that are all based in craving, desire, attachment. Because remember, the Four Noble Truths is helping you to understand that craving, desire, attachment is what's causing your discontentedness. So each one of these types of speech is based in craving, desire, attachment. So if you're going to eliminate craving, you need to eliminate this type of conduct. So for example, lying. If you can remember when you were lying a lot, maybe as a child, there was something you wanted. There was something your mind was longing, yearning for. And if you told the truth, you felt like you weren't going to get what you wanted. So you would have maybe lied in order to try to get what it is that you want, right? So you're going to need to eliminate lying, because people discover your lies and they figure out your lies. And now they don't think of you as a dependable, reliable, and trustworthy person. And you're going to experience the unwholesome results, the unwholesome karma, that people discover your lies and they don't think of you as trustworthy. And if you think about when you've done maybe a lot of lying, you had to keep your lies straight. What did you say to one person versus another versus another? And how can you get to peace and joy if you're constantly having to remember all these different lies, right? Your mind's burdened with that. So if you just tell the truth, no big deal. You just speak the truth. No big deal, right? So easy. Then there's refraining from slander. What slander or gossip is where you're trying to damage somebody else's reputation, and the mind has a craving to look good. The mind thinks, if I damage someone else and I make them look bad, then I will look better, right? This is the craving, desire, attachment. But this is going to produce unwholesome results for you. It's kind of like the mind thinks that you're walking into a dark room and everybody's got a candle, and the mind thinks that if I put out everybody else's candle, my candle's going to shine brighter. But no, we're in a dark room. We need everybody's candle to shine bright. We don't need to diminish other people. At the height of this, if you go around gossiping and slandering people, you can be murdered, right? This is the unwholesome karma, that if you cause harm to someone's physical body, their material possessions, or their reputation, there's going to be harm that comes back to you. This is why you can see like an investigative reporter that's on the news, and they might be reporting about some kind of corruption or something like this. And next thing you know, they end up dead. Right? The Buddha's not teaching you the way the world should be, that if everybody follows rules and commandments, the world's going to become a better place. Instead, he's helping you understand the way the world is. And the way the world is that if you damage someone's reputation, you can get murdered, you can get beat up. At the very least, when your back is turned and those people that you were gossiping with, when your back's turned, what do you think they're going to be doing? Yeah, they're going to be gossiping about you. Right? Because you got these people used to gossiping and slandering, and now when your back's turned, they're going to be gossiping and slandering about you. So if you don't not interested in people gossiping and slandering about you, you're going to need to stop gossiping and slandering. That's the wholesome results of training your mind. That now you'll see that there's not going to be people gossiping and slandering. Right? Then there's refraining from harsh speech. This is your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. When you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind, you'll tend to speak pretty harsh, hostile, and aggressive because you want something and you want this person to do it or to give you what it is that you want. And now you might be bitter and harsh and hostile to that person through your speech and the way that you're interacting with them. So you're going to need to pay attention to your tone, your tempo, and your word choice, and the way that you talk with people, because then you can get rid of your cravings, desires, attachments. You're going to need to find gentle ways to speak with people. And some of you guys speak more than one language, so you're going to need to look at all of those different languages and figure out what's the best way to speak, right? Because you might need to use words that you're not currently using right now, like sir and ma'am, or please and thank you, or things of this nature, right? You're going to need to investigate this, and you're going to need to improve your practice in the way that you interact with people through your speech, speaking gently. And that's what's going to produce the wholesome karma. Because when you speak harshly, it's producing unwholesome karma for you. Because those same people that you speak harsh to, look at those relationships. They speak harsh to you too. Because whatever you put out, it's going to come back to you. So if you're interested in improving this, you're going to need to improve the way you interact with people through your way that you speak. You're going to need to pay attention to your tone, tempo, and word choice. Then there's refraining from frivolous speech. With frivolous speech or idle chatter is where your mind is just talking and talking and talking and talking and talking. There's no benefit. There's no purpose. It's just, you might have been in this kind of conversation before where someone's just like yada 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 yada. It's like 20 minutes later, you're just sitting there listening to this person, and they haven't even opened up the conversation for you to talk. It's not even a conversation. It's not a discussion. They are broadcasting to you. That's what they're doing, right? And you're just like, oh my gosh, when is this person going to stop talking, right? So if you went around having frivolous speech, people will be tuning you out. You're going to be less influential amongst the relationships, both personally and professionally. So when you speak, you would like to have purpose. You would like to speak beneficially. You would like to create space so that it's a conversation, so that you can talk a little bit, and then create space so another person can talk, and then you talk, and you go back and forth like this, right? Whereas if you just have frivolous speech, unpurposeful, unbeneficial speech, people are going to tune you out. They're going to be less and less interested in talking with you. You're going to be less influential in your relationships. So once you understand these four, eliminating lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech, and you start getting your arms around that, then you would like to go deeper into this, because there's another teaching called the 5 Factors of Well-Spoken Speech, which will actually help you even more. This is a teaching that plugs into the Eightfold Path. Here, the Buddha teaches you to speak at the proper time. What you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. This is the natural laws. He's showing you how to speak wisely. So what speaking the proper time is there's 3 aspects to it. The first one is you're not interested in interrupting people. Because when you interrupt people, there's a certain craving that you have. You just can't wait to get in there and start talking. You can't wait your turn. You have a longing, yearning, and you're just trying to jump in to the conversation. And you don't like it when people interrupt you. So if you go around interrupting people, you can tell that they're not going to like that, and it's going to cause difficulties in your relationships. So you like to wait your turn. The other part of speaking the proper time is to make sure your mind's prepared to talk. If you're angry, if you're frustrated, if you're irritated or annoyed, that's all that's going to come out. Your anger and hostility is going to come out. And that's where you've damaged relationships before. You can see that when you've been bitter and harsh and hostile with people, your mind wasn't prepared to talk. It wasn't the proper time to talk. So now your mind was experiencing this difficulty and struggle, and it damaged your relationship. And then the third aspect is making sure it's the proper time for the other person to talk. Right? That you're not interested in talking when the other person's mind is unwell. If they're angry, if they're frustrated, there's nothing that's going to get in during that period of time. Right? So that's the proper time, making sure that you don't interrupt, making sure your mind's prepared to talk, make sure the other person's mind's prepared to talk. We already spoke about speaking the truth. We talked about that up here, eliminating lying. We also talked about speaking gently. That's up here where the Buddha is teaching you to eliminate harsh speech. This is where you pay attention to your tone, tempo, and word choice. That's going to help you to speak gently. We also talked about speaking beneficially, making sure that you're purposeful, that you're clear and concise in the way that you're talking, that you're not just having rambling chit-chat, unpurposeful, unbeneficial speech. Okay? Then you'd like to wrap all of this in a mind of loving kindness. The opposite of loving kindness is inner hate. If you speak with inner hate, this is going to produce unwholesome karma for you, right? So you would like to be sure that you wrap all of this in a mind of loving kindness. So these are the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. You speak at the proper time. What you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. Now remember, none of these teachings are based in belief. This isn't rules. This isn't commandments. The Buddha is explaining to you the natural laws of existence. So you've got to independently verify this to be able to see that it's true. This is where you move it into reflection. Take a recent conversation that didn't go well for you. Look at that conversation. You and or the other person wasn't speaking with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. You weren't speaking at the proper time, or you weren't speaking the truth, or you weren't gentle or beneficial, or with a mind of loving kindness. And that's why the conversation didn't go well, because these natural laws affect you, whether you're aware of it or not. But then take the other side of this. Don't just stop there. Look at the other side. You've had wholesome conversations before. You've had conversations that have gone very well. In fact, at break time, when we just took a break, you might have had some conversations with people and it went well for you. That's because you and the other person was using the 5 factors of well-spoken speech without even realizing it, right? Because these are natural laws, right? So now what you would like to do is take this to the point where instead of inadvertently practicing these, you actually consciously practice these. You've got to dial this in closer and closer. You'll find this to be the most difficult in relationships where you have craving, desire, attachment, like your parents, your siblings, your life partner, your children. You'll really struggle with this gentle speech, right? This is where people think the problem is your parents or your siblings, because with your friends, where you don't have very much craving, desire, attachment, you can speak very gentle and very easy with them because you don't have much craving there. But with your parents and your sibling and your life partner, that's where it's hard for you. That's where you become bitter and harsh and hostile, because that's where you have the deepest cravings, the expectations, the wants. So you're going to need to work on those relationships by working on your own mind, by training it to practice these at all times. Now, you're not going to be able to go out here and just snap your fingers and instantly start doing this perfectly. It's going to take time for you to gradually train your mind to do this. The next section of the Eightfold Path is what's going to help you with this, which is the mental discipline. But this is the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, which you would like to gradually be implementing into your life and train your mind to do this. And eventually, once you get your practice up to that, it'll be effortless. You'll be able to do this with everybody, but it's going to take you some work and some effort to get up to that point. Now, during the lifetime of the Buddha, they referred to this as right speech, because that's all that existed during his lifetime was speech. We might actually think about this as right communication, because we do much more than speech. We have text messages, social media posts, we have voicemails, we have emails, all these other things. So we need to practice this in all those situations. So for example, if you're angry and frustrated and you go over to your computer and you're pounding on the keyboard to send an email, right? It's not the proper time to be communicating because your mind is hostile and bitter. The only thing that's coming out in that email is your hostility and bitterness. So if you hit send, you're sending that anger out into the world and it's going to come back to you, right? But if you're sitting there pounding on your keyboard and you're thinking, oh yeah, it's not the proper time to talk, just hit save and walk away. Come back a few hours later, a few days later, look at that email and decide, is this really something that you would like to send? Right? So you need to think about this as right communication. Think about if you went to a job interview and you showed up and you did really, really well on the job interview. You knocked it out of the park. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to hire this person. They are so good, so well put together. Oh my gosh, they're so great. But then they looked at your social media and they saw this bitterness and hostility on your social media. You're probably not going to get the job. Right? That's your unwholesome karma from not using the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. You would like to use right speech or right communication in all situations throughout your day, whether it's speech, text messages, social media, whether it's any of this other stuff, emails, all the ways that we communicate. And this is going to take you time to gradually train your mind to do this. Okay? So now, this next thing is a little shortcut that I kind of share with you guys. You're going to need to know what the Buddha taught because that's the natural laws, but there's going to be some rare situations between now and when you get to practicing the 5 factors of well-spoken speech perfectly that you're not going to remember what the 5 factors of well-spoken speech are. If you can remember to speak polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, this will help you and lean in the direction of the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. But you're still going to need to know the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. So now in the next 3 months and 6 months, when you're in that situation, like say you're on the phone with your mom and you're having a conversation and you feel your anger starting to come up. You're not going to be like, hold on, mom, I am really getting angry here. I need to look at this book. There's these 5 factors of well-spoken speech that the Buddha taught. Hold on, mom, I'm really angry here. I need to figure out, what are these 5 factors of well-spoken speech? You're not going to be able to do that, right? So if you can just remember to speak polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, this is going to be really helpful for your mind. But ultimately, you're going to need to know the 5 factors. So one of the things that I used to do is I used to review them in the morning before I would go out in my day. It only takes like a minute or two to bring them to the forefront of your mind and really, hone in on it. Then I would have meetings all morning. And then at lunchtime, I would look at the 5 factors again. And I would reflect on the conversations that I had in the morning. And I'd be like, oh man, I kept interrupting that guy. I got to get better at that, right? Or I would, look at the things that I didn't do well, and I would look at the things that I did well. So then in the afternoon, I would really hone in on that. And I would really try to make sure that I'm speaking at the proper time. And I did that for several weeks until my mind was able to practice these 5 factors in all situations. And there were a few times where I was having difficulties and I couldn't remember the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. So I just remembered, speak polite, kind, friendly, and respectful in all situations. But then you're going to need to know the 5 factors in detail. That's what's going to get you to enlightenment. Okay? So you might decide to get this book, like I mentioned yesterday, because you're going to have a lot of details in here about this stuff. And that'll help you. Then there's right action. Here the Buddha says, in what, monks, is right action? Refraining from taking life, refraining from taking what is not given, refraining from sexual misconduct. This is called right action. So here he's talking about causing harm through your bodily actions, because if you cause harm through your bodily actions, that harm is going to come back to you. Here, he's just speaking in a very summary form. But tomorrow, with the 5 precepts, he's going to expand this for you. And he's going to give you much more details. He doesn't speak with the details here because he has it in the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. He's also not giving you an exhaustive list. He's giving you 3 impactful ones: killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. One of the first things that someone might say is, well, what's sexual misconduct? What is that? That's what you're going to learn in the 5 precepts, right? So the things that he talks about there are things like having sex with minors, having sex outside of relationships that you're currently committed in. These are the things that we're going to talk about tomorrow. It's helpful to make sure you understand that he doesn't talk about same-gender relationships as harmful, because the Buddha knew 2,500 years ago that same-gender relationships don't cause any harm. So if you have same-gender relationships, or you know someone who does, you're not causing any harm. You're two loyal, loving, consenting adults. And if you're choosing to have sex, you're not causing harm to anybody, right? Sometimes people think that, there's something problematic with that. Well, if you understand the universal truth of impermanence, ever since the beginning of humanity, there's never been a time where everybody had sex with the opposite gender. If everybody had sex with the opposite gender, that would be permanence. And that has never existed since the beginning of humanity. Ever since the beginning of humanity, there's men and women that have sex, but there's also women that have sex with each other, and there's also men who have sex with each other, right? This is how wise this individual was. 2,500 years ago, he understood that two loyal, loving, consenting adults choosing to have sex, they're not actually causing harm. So we're going to explore that tomorrow and help you to understand it. But just know here, under right action, the Buddha's not giving you an exhaustive list. Like, notice he doesn't say, don't walk up to someone and punch them in the face. Right? He didn't say that, but if you understand this step, you understand how unwise that is, because the cause and effect of that is that if you punch someone in the face, they're probably going to punch you back, or their friends and family are going to come attack you, or they're going to pull out a knife or a gun or something like that. That's the unwholesome karma of your unwise decision to cause harm through your bodily actions. Notice he doesn't say, it would be unwise to drag your suitcase through the aisle of a plane and run over people's feet and bump into their knees, right? He didn't say that because airplanes didn't even exist during his lifetime. So you're going to need to understand this step, that it's not causing harm through your bodily actions, and you're going to need to apply this in all situations that you're in. Okay, so this is right action, not causing harm through your bodily actions. And we're going to explore that tomorrow more with the 5 precepts. Here, the Buddha is talking about a livelihood. First, let me explain to you what a livelihood is. This is how you choose to sustain your life. If you choose to sustain your life off of causing harm to others, like your occupation, the way you acquire resources in your day-to-day life, if you cause harm to others, then harm's going to come back to you. So here in the Eightfold Path, the Buddha says something very general and very broad. He says, and what, monks, is right livelihood? Here, monks, the noble disciple, having given up wrong livelihood, keeps himself by right livelihood. So here he's just saying something very general and very broad. But then you need to look in his other teachings where you're going to find the detail where he's going to help you to be able to see what is right livelihood. So here he's giving you 5 livelihoods that would cause harm if you choose to practice these. If you have business in weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, or poisons, it's causing harm, and you're sustaining your life off of causing harm to others. So therefore, harm's going to come to you. So remember, this isn't rules. It's not commandments. It's not anything like that. There's nothing here to believe. You need to be able to see the truth for yourself. You need to independently verify this. So I'll show you how to do this. Let's just take one, like substances that cause heedlessness. If I was standing on the street corner selling crystal methamphetamine or heroin into the community, I'm causing harm to this community. These people are getting addicted to that substance. They're going out to steal in order to bring me money. Maybe they're selling their body in order to bring me money. And now me standing on the street corner, since I'm causing harm, harm's going to come back to me. I'm going to get beat up. I might get murdered. Someone might rob me. I might get arrested. I might get addicted to these substances myself. This is the unwholesome karma as a result of me choosing a livelihood that is causing harm. And as long as I keep doing that, I'm going to keep experiencing this harm over and over and over again coming back to me, right? So this is the natural law of karma. And in most places in the world, it's illegal to stand on the street corner and sell crystal methamphetamine or heroin, but not everywhere. Some places, the government won't arrest you for doing these kinds of things. But the natural law of karma functions at a much higher level than any governmental law. The government laws, those are the laws of society. They're created by human beings. They are imperfect. But this natural law of karma isn't created by human beings. It functions at all times. So for example, the country that I grew up in, I'm able to go be a cashier at a liquor store, for example. The government's not going to arrest me for that. If I'd like to be a cashier at a liquor store, I can go do that. But if you understand the natural law of karma, you might decide that that's really unwise. Because if I was a cashier at a liquor store, those are the places that get robbed. People come in to try to steal money from you or steal the liquor. And now they're going to beat you up. They might murder you. You get robbed. Any number of different things can happen here. At the very least, you're going to be dealing with intoxicated clientele that are coming in from time to time. How can you get to peace and joy if you're having to regularly deal with intoxicated people? Right? So this natural law of karma is functioning at a much higher level than any human laws. So your government could tell you, sure, go be a cashier at the liquor store. We're not going to do anything. You can do that job. But if you understand the natural law of karma, you might realize that that's really unwise for you and that you're putting yourself in a situation where you can experience significant unwholesome results in that situation. So this is the types of livelihood that the Buddha is describing that would be unwise for you to conduct because it's going to produce harm, and now harm is going to come back to you. But he also teaches you how to perform your livelihood in a way that's going to produce successful results for you, because he's showing you how to get to a very wonderful livelihood to the point where it doesn't even feel like work anymore, that you thoroughly enjoy what it is that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. If you're dragging yourself to work, you're not in a livelihood that is going to produce peace and harmony within your life. So the Buddha is teaching you how to perform your livelihood in a way that's going to produce lots of success for you. So here he's talking about eliminating scheming, flattering, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. So for example, if I was the mayor of a town and I'm doing this job, I'm not causing any harm to anybody. I'm just running this town by being the mayor. I was elected to this position and now I'm running this town. But if I was scheming, I was doing backhanded deals, right, in order to enrich myself. Well, now 10, 15 years into my career, people find out about this and now they're not going to be willing to reelect me. Right? So this isn't going to produce the best results for you. Now you struggle to be able to survive because you can't get elected, and you've based your career off of being a politician, and now you can't get reelected, and now you're having difficulties to sustain your life. So the Buddha teaches you to eliminate scheming. He also teaches you to eliminate flattery. This is where you're giving insincere comments just to get people to buy things from you. Have you ever been in a store where you walk in and they're like, oh my gosh, that shirt, it looks so great on you. It really brings out the colors of your eyes and the shape of your face. Oh my God, you are so beautiful. You're so handsome. You know, I've got these great earrings that'll go really good with that shirt. Would you like to come over here and take a look? Right? It's kind of like, ugh. They're just kind of flattering you just to try to get you to buy something from them. And if you've ever been in this kind of situation, you might have felt like you wanted to turn around and leave right outside the door. Because when people do business, they don't do business with a business. They do business with people. And if they're doing business with you as a person and you're functioning in an unwise way, they're going to be less interested in doing business with you. So you are not interested in just flattering people in order to get them to buy things from you. You would like to have people buy things on you based on the merit of your product or your service, because then they can see the value in it, and then you could continue to be able to sell those things and be really successful. You can build up your karma to be a very successful business person. So you're not interested in flattering people. What hinting is where you're not clear and concise in the work that you're doing. So for example, if all of us are on a project team and we need to go brief the boss about what it is that we're doing on this project, we'd like to be clear and concise when we go in and talk to the boss. Whereas if we're just rambling around and we're not clear and we're just hinting around, the boss can't figure out what it is that we're doing, and we're not going to be very successful in our career. So we like to be clear and concise when we go in and brief the boss about the project that we're working on. Then there's belittling. This is being degrading and disparaging, diminishing your coworkers, your customers, your business partners, or your competition. If you're degrading and diminishing people as part of your livelihood, this isn't going to produce wholesome results for you. Sometimes people think the way to get ahead in business is to make your competition look bad and kind of push them down. So now when your customers come in, if you belittle your competition, people think that that's going to help you to sell your product or your service. But in reality, it just makes you look bad. So you're not interested in belittling other people as part of your livelihood. If you are asked about your competition and someone's like, hey, what's going on with your competition? You can easily just say things like, I'm not sure 100% what it is that they offer, but this is what I can offer for you. Here's how I can help you. Just focus on that. You don't need to degrade your competition. So you're not interested in belittling the people, whether it's your customers, your coworkers, your business partner, or your competition. Then the Buddha talks about pursuing gain with gain. What this is that you're only interested in the money. That's all you care about in relationship to this job or this occupation, that you're just showing up for the paycheck. If you've ever had this kind of job, when you first got the job, you were probably really happy and really excited that you were getting all this new money. But then after about 3 months, 6 months, or a year, that kind of wore off and you felt like you were dragging yourself to work each day because you really didn't like the work. You didn't really like the product or the service that you were involved in, and you just were unmotivated. You just kind of dragged yourself to work each day. Well, how can you get to peace and joy if 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, you're going to this place that you despise and you really don't want to be there because you don't really enjoy the work that you're doing? So the Buddha is teaching you how to get to a point where you thoroughly enjoy the work that you're doing, that it doesn't even feel like work anymore. And you can't even imagine doing anything else but that particular job, that particular livelihood. That sure, you're collecting money and you need that in order to sustain your life, but you just thoroughly enjoy what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. There's people like that here in Thailand. If you go outside, there's probably a person on the street corner selling mango and sticky rice. They probably woke up this morning, they went to their mango grove and they picked each little mango, brushed off the dust, and they put it in their basket, right? And then they brought it to the market and they cooked their sticky rice. And now they're standing there with a big smile on their face, just slicing their mangoes. And they're putting that mango over top of that hot sticky rice, and they're pouring that warm coconut milk over the top of it. And they're handing it to you with a smile on their face, and they're collecting the little 40 baht. And they're putting it in their pocket. And they can't imagine doing anything else other than preparing that mango and sticky rice for you and handing it to you. They just thoroughly enjoy this work that they're doing, right? So what you would like to do is you'd like to find your mango and sticky rice. What is your mango and sticky rice that you're going to thoroughly enjoy? And you can't imagine doing anything else other than that it doesn't even feel like work anymore. In fact, if you could, you would do it for free. But you do need to collect some money in order to sustain your life, but that's just kind of like on the side, right? That you just thoroughly enjoy this thing anymore so much that it doesn't even feel like work. And that's what you would like to do, is what is your mango and sticky rice? So right now, if you're in a job that you don't like and you're dragging yourself to work each day, you're going to need to find something else, right? So what I just taught you is I taught you what's called the first fold of purification related to right livelihood. But there's a second fold. There's a second level of purification. You'll find this in our book series in volume 12, chapter 14. So if you're in between jobs right now, or if you're in a job that you don't particularly care for, you might decide to look at volume 12, chapter 14. That's where you're going to see the full teaching from the Buddha on how to get to this right livelihood where you can thoroughly enjoy the work that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so this is right livelihood. So just to summarize that, this is the moral conduct section where you have right speech, where you're not causing harm through any of your verbal conduct, but also your text, your chat, your posts, your emails, all of this should be harmless, using those right speech from the Eightfold Path, where the Buddha teaches you to eliminate lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. But then in more detail, the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. These aren't rules or commandments. He's just helping you see the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, or action and result. What leads to wholesome results? What are the wise decisions that you can make about your moral conduct that's going to produce wholesome results? And understand it's going to take you time to gradually tweak this. You can't go outside and snap your fingers and instantly do this stuff, especially in the relationships that you're in right now. You have certain cravings there. So you're going to need to gradually chip away at this and work on it little by little. Then there's right action, ensuring that you're not causing any harm through your bodily actions in the way that you interact with people. He talks about killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, but you're going to need to come up with all the others. That when you're going through the aisle of an airplane, that you're not bumping into people and you're not causing harm to people's physical body and things like this. So you'd like to not cause harm through your bodily actions. And then your livelihood is, the livelihood is the one we were just talking about, where you choose to sustain your life in a way that doesn't cause harm to others. You would like to make sure you don't have business in weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons. That'll make sure you're not causing harm through your livelihood and sustaining your life on that. But then you'd also like to eliminate scheming, flattery, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. This will help you to perform your livelihood in a way that's going to produce wholesome results, and you can be thoroughly enjoying the work that you're doing, and you can have lots and lots of success in your livelihood. So any questions on the moral conduct section? No questions? All right. Don't see any online either. All right. So now we're going to move into this next part, because the moral conduct section is based on the wisdom section, right? Because why would you ever change anything about your moral conduct if you didn't understand that it was your own mind that was causing these feelings, right? So the very first part of the path is to understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. So then you realize, oh my gosh, me being bitter and harsh and hostile to people, that's the worst thing ever. I'm just causing harm, right? It's not even them that are causing me to be angry. I'm causing it myself. That's what right view is helping you to see. So that's where you then understand, well, man, I need to change my moral conduct. I need to change the way that I interact with people. But you wouldn't be able to do that if you didn't understand the mental discipline section. The mental discipline is what's going to help you to improve your moral conduct. Because it's one thing to sit here and talk about being gentle and loving and kind to people, but it's a whole nother thing to go out there in the world and actually do it. That's what you need to be able to do, is be able to go out into the world and actually be loving and kind with people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. So the mental discipline section is what's going to help you to be able to do that and put that moral conduct into practice. So I'm going to walk you guys through each one of these just like I have been. So this is what the words of the Buddha on right effort. He says, "In what, monks, is right effort? Here, monks, a monk rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to prevent the arising of unarisen, evil, unwholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to overcome evil, unwholesome mental states that have arisen. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to produce unarisen, wholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not to let them fade away, to bring them to greater growth, to the full perfection of development. This is called right effort." So he's talking about 4 things here. And what I've done on this next slide is I've broken it down so you can see what those 4 things are. And I'm going to give you examples so you can understand how to implement this. So the first one, he says, prevent unwholesome mental states that have not arisen from arising in the mind. So what he's talking about here is there's certain unwholesome mental states that are not currently in your mind. An example of that is killing another human being. This is probably the farthest thing from your mind right now. You have no interest in killing another human being whatsoever. It's completely outside your mind. And what the Buddha is saying is these types of things, you're going to need to apply the effort to prevent them from ever coming into the mind. Don't allow these unwholesome things to come into your mind, because once they do, you're now potentially going to act upon it, and it's going to produce unwholesome karma or unwholesome results for you. So you need to prevent unwholesome mental states from coming into the mind. Then you need to abandon unwholesome mental states that have arisen in the mind. Right now, there's certain unwholesome mental states in your mind. If you're unenlightened, you have unwholesomeness in your mind to a certain degree. There's different things that you need to be able to see that are unwholesome. For example, someone could potentially be in an existing relationship and they have a craving to have sex outside of that relationship. If you go out and do that, it's going to produce unwholesome results for you. So if you see that craving coming up into your mind, that unwholesomeness, you're going to need to apply the effort to eliminate that out of your mind. Or let's just say there's anger, frustration, or irritation. that unwholesomeness is coming up into your mind, you're going to need to apply the effort to get rid of that and empty it out of the mind. So that's the second one. Abandon unwholesome mental states that have arisen in the mind. You're going to need to apply the effort to do that. Then there's produce unarisen wholesome mental states to arise in the mind. There are certain wholesome mental states that you're going to need that are not currently in your mind right now. You're going to need to apply the effort to bring those wholesome mental states into your mind. A good example of that might be generosity. Let's just say somebody finds out that generosity is a very important part of this path, which it is. It's going to train your mind to let go. You're going to need to practice giving and sharing with the people around you, because with craving, desire, attachment, you'll be somewhat selfish. You'll hold on to things. It's like my friends, my clothes, my jewelry, my money, my food, mine, 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 mine. You'll hold on to everything. But when you're practicing generosity, you're living open-handedly. You're sharing with other people, right? This is going to actually train your mind to let go and to not hold on to things so tightly. Well, if you know that your mind isn't very generous and you tend to be somewhat selfish and you have a hard time to share with other people, you're going to need to apply the effort to share with other people. You're going to need to bring that quality into your mind because your mind doesn't currently have generosity. Or compassion. Compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others. If you're on one side of this, you'll have indifference where you could care less about what other people experience. You see someone who's struggling, maybe they're homeless or maybe they're addicted to drugs, and you're like, I don't care. It's not my mom. It's not my dad. I don't care, right? That's indifference. That's one side of compassion. But on the other side of compassion, you'll have worry and anxiety. It's like, oh my gosh, those kids don't have food. What are they going to do? What are they going to eat? And now all day long, you're worrying about those children that you saw that don't have food. Your mind's worried and having anxiety. So on either side of this, your mind's not in the middle because you don't have compassion. You need to be able to cultivate this compassion where you have concern for the misfortune of others. So where you see your mind does not have this compassion, you're going to need to apply the effort to bring your mind to this compassion, where you have concern for the misfortune of others. Whether you choose to do something about it or not, that's a whole nother decision. But you need to maintain your mental quality of having concern for the misfortune of others. And you're going to need to apply the effort to do this. Then there's the fourth one here. Maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not allowing them to fade away, and work to increase their growth in the mind. Bring them to the full growth, full perfection, and full development. So there's certain wholesome qualities that are in your mind right now, but they haven't been brought to full growth, full perfection, and full development. So you're going to need to apply the effort to do that. So for example, loving kindness. You probably have loving kindness in your mind right now, right? Loving kindness is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, active goodwill towards others. You probably have that in your mind to a certain degree, but it hasn't been brought to full growth, full perfection, and full development. That's why you get angry and frustrated and bitter and harsh in some situations. So where you see that that's the case, you're going to need to apply the effort to arise this loving kindness, this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. Then there's something like sympathetic joy. You probably have sympathetic joy in your mind. This is where you have joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. This is the opposite of jealousy or envy, because if you have jealousy or envy in there, that's a craving. You're wanting something and somebody else has it and you don't have it. And now you're jealous or you're envious. But in order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to have sympathetic joy, where you have joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. So for example, if someone came to you and said, hey, I'm thinking about going to Thailand. What do you think? And you're like, oh, that's wonderful. You're going to Thailand? I've been to Thailand. That's a really wonderful place. Oh, by the way, there's this lady that sells mango and sticky rice on the corner. Really good stuff, right? And now you're joyful for their success, even though you didn't contribute to it. That's the sympathetic joy. You probably have that in your mind to a certain degree. But in other situations, you probably don't have this. Like say you're at work and a new position opens up. It's a promotion. There's more money. It's a better title, better office, more responsibility. And you apply for it. And some of your coworkers apply for it. and they get the job instead of you. And now you're jealous and envious. Maybe they're walking around the office, they're gloating and all conceited that they got the new job, and they swing by your desk and like, hey, by the way, I got that new job. And you're noticing this jealousy or envy coming up in your mind. You're going to need to apply the effort to bring in the sympathetic joy. Be like, hey, Barbara, I'm very pleased for you. That's wonderful for your family. I know you've been working really hard. Congratulations. Even though your mind doesn't quite have it 100%, you're going to need to bubble it up. You're going to need to bring that to full growth, full perfection, and full development. Okay, so these are the 4 right efforts where you're preventing unwholesome mental states that haven't arisen in the mind. You're eliminating or abandoning the unwholesome mental states that are currently in your mind. You're applying the effort to bring in the wholesome mental states that aren't currently in your mind. And then you're going to need to apply the effort to maintain and support the wholesome mental states that are in your mind. Bring them to full growth, full perfection, and full development. So these are just examples that I'm giving here. When I taught this to my son when he was very young, I taught him to kick out the unwholesome and bring in the wholesome. You're going to need to apply the effort to do that. So I'm just using examples here that are just helping you to understand what right effort is. What is wholesome and what is unwholesome that's in your mind? That's what you've got to figure out. And that's what the next step is going to help you to do. Right mindfulness is going to help you implement right effort. Without right mindfulness, you wouldn't be able to implement right effort. So let me teach you this one. The Buddha says, in what, monks, is right mindfulness? Here, monks, a monk resides, reflecting on body as body, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on feelings as feelings, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mind as mind, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides reflecting on mental objects as mental objects, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. This is called right mindfulness. So he's talking about 4 things here: body as body, feelings as feelings, mind as mind, and mental objects as mental objects. This is actually referred to as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. But let me first just talk about mindfulness in general, and then we'll talk about this. What mindfulness in general is just having awareness of mind. You're going to need to have awareness of what's going on in your own mind, right? Oftentimes we don't have that awareness when we're in the unenlightened state. We're just going through life, knocking down trees, burning up the forest. Right? I don't know about you guys, but that's what I did for a long time. I was just knocking down trees, burning up the forest, going through the forest, knocking down all the trees. And I started smelling smoke, and I was like, what's that? And I looked behind me and I saw the fire and I saw the trees were knocked down. And I was like, who knocked down all those trees? Right? And then I learned right view, the 4 Noble Truths. I was like, oh my gosh, I knocked down all those trees. It was me who did that. I'm the one who lit those fires, right? So you're sometimes not even aware what you're doing in life because you haven't cultivated your mind to have mindfulness. You would like to have awareness of what's going on within your own mind. Now, sometimes people use this word in modern conversations, and they're not using it the way that the Buddha used it. Somebody might tell you, can you mindfully carry this glass of water to the table? Can you mindfully carry this glass of water to the table? What they're really saying is, can you carefully carry this glass of water to the table? That's not what the Buddha is teaching you. The Buddha is teaching you to have awareness of mind. So if other people would like to use it that way, that's a choice for them to make. But I would encourage you to get closer and closer to what the Buddha taught, because that's what's going to help you to understand his path. So what mindfulness means is awareness of mind. You would like to cultivate this awareness of your thoughts, your ideas, your feelings, what's going on in there. You need to be able to be aware of that. Okay, so that's mindfulness in general. And you might just hang out there for 3 months or 6 months, just cultivating awareness of mind. But then you're going to need to know the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and you're going to need to practice this. What this is this is the life cycle that discontentedness is going to take as it's arising in your mind. First, before your mind gets the feeling of anger, there's going to be some bodily sensations associated with that. You're going to notice tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, or pressure in the skull. You may or may not be aware of this right now, but you're having this early warning system that is alerting you that you're about to experience discontentedness. Sometimes with something like shyness, we call it butterflies in the stomach or queasiness in the stomach, right? That's the bodily sensations associated with shyness, right? Even the pleasant feelings. You usually have tingling across your shoulders, up the back of the neck, over the head. Some people call these warm fuzzies, and they're like, oh, that feels so good. That's the early warning system that you're about to get a conditioned pleasant feeling. Your mind's trying to form a feeling based on some external circumstance. And what the Buddha teaches you is that when you notice that, you would like to cut it off and let it go. Don't allow your mind to form that conditioned feeling, right? You're not suppressing your feelings here or repressing them. You're actually cutting it off and letting it go before it even becomes a feeling. It's just a bodily sensation. It's the tingling in the body, the tightening in the chest. You're like, oh my gosh, the mind's about to get angry. You cut that off and let it go. Don't allow your mind to do that. It's kind of like if you were in a boat and you were going from Australia to Indonesia. If you're out in the middle of the boat, you would like to prevent the water from ever coming into the boat. Because once the water gets in the boat, you've got a real problem to deal with. Same thing is true. Once you allow the anger to come into your mind, you've got a real problem to deal with. You've got to get rid of it now. But if you can prevent it from ever coming into your mind, you've just protected your mind. You've just preserved your mind. And if you do this enough where you cut off and let go at the bodily sensations, eventually you'll never get angry. It just doesn't arise. For an enlightened being, there's no arising of anger because the causes and conditions that produce it have been eliminated. But in this training period, you're going to need to be observant of your mind. And whenever you notice the bodily sensations arising, you need to cut it off and let it go. Cut it off and let it go. Cut it off and let it go. This is the early warning system alerting you that you're about to get angry. It's kind of like the mind saying, I'm about to get angry. 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 And you're like, nope, not going to let you. You cut it off and let it go. And then over time, your mind won't do that anymore. So there's the bodily sensations that you'd like to cut it off and let it go there. But you're not going to catch it there every single time in this early stage of your development. So you're going to miss it as a bodily sensation sometimes. And then it's going to become a feeling that now you're angry, now you're frustrated, now you're agitated or annoyed. Well, if you notice it there as a feeling, cut it off and let it go there. Don't allow your mind to keep experiencing that feeling. But if you don't cut it off as a feeling, it's now going to be affecting the condition of your mind. This is where you might be grumpy or irritable for a few minutes, a few hours, a few days. Have you ever been grumpy for like a week or two? Of course you have, right? Because you didn't know this. You didn't understand this, where you had some kind of contact through your senses. And now your mind saw that as agreeable or disagreeable. And now there was this arising of anger. There was bodily sensations. There was the feeling that came into the mind. And then it affected your mind for several hours or days or a week or two. You walked around grumpy and irritable. So if you notice it there as a condition of the mind, you'd like to cut it off and let it go there. Because if you don't, it's going to feed what's called a mental object. A mental object is a deeply rooted container in the mind. All those 10 fetters that we talked about yesterday, those are all mental objects. So the mental object in this example of anger is ill will. That there's ill will in the mind. There's this deeply rooted container in the mind. Like right now, you probably don't have any anger or frustration in your mind. But if something gets triggered, that ill will is going to come up in your mind. That's the deeply rooted container. So what the Buddha is teaching you to do is to put a blockade at the bodily sensations and cut off and let go every single time as it's coming up as a bodily sensation. And then you're using the tools and techniques that he's teaching you to uproot these mental objects and get them out of the mind. And it's going to take gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress for this to occur. You're not going to be able to go out into the world and just instantly start doing this stuff. It can take many years just to get to the point where you can cut off and let go at the bodily sensations every single time. but this is what you would like to be able to get to, that your mind is aware of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. One of the ways that I think about this mindfulness is it's kind of like a virus scanner on a computer. The virus scanner on the computer is kind of sitting there in the background, and it's watching over the hard drive. And whenever there's a virus that comes onto your hard drive, it kind of quarantines it off to the side, it cleans it up, and it gets it off your hard drive. So your mindfulness is the same way. It's kind of watching over your mind so that anytime you see any anger, frustration, agitation, or annoyance coming up in your mind, you got to cut it off. You've got to apply right effort and get it out of your mind, right? So that's what your mindfulness is doing, is watching over your mind. And that's what's going to allow you to apply right effort. If it wasn't for right mindfulness, you wouldn't be able to apply right effort. But if it wasn't for the next step, you wouldn't be able to actually practice right mindfulness. The next step is helping you to develop right mindfulness. Okay, so this is called right concentration. I'm not going to read this to you because what the Buddha is doing here is he's explaining to you the jhanas. The jhanas are 4 preliminary phases that you experience before you get to the first stage of enlightenment. These are enhanced qualities of mind that you're going to experience once you put together all of the Eightfold Path. When you put together all the Eightfold Path really well for an extended period of time, you're going to start experiencing these enhanced qualities of mind. So for example, in the second jhana, you will have what's called oneness of mind or unification of the mind. Prior to the second jhana, you have a conscious mind and you have a subconscious mind. Your conscious mind is what you're aware of. Your subconscious mind, you're unaware of that. And both of these are actually polluted. But the subconscious mind is even more polluted than the conscious mind. So if you've ever been standing around with your friends and you blurted something out and you were like, oh my gosh, that was really racist. I don't think that way. Where did that come from? I have no idea where that came from. That was your subconscious mind throwing things up into your conscious mind, and you just blurted it out, right? So in order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to have entire awareness of your entire mind. So by the time you get to the second jhana, you have oneness of mind or unification of the mind where you're aware of the entire mind. There's no longer a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. By the time you get to the second jhana, you have awareness of the entire mind. So that now you can actually purify it and train it. Right? So there's enhanced qualities here, but you need to be able to practice the entire Eightfold Path, putting that together. And that's what the Buddha is describing to you. What are these enhanced qualities? This is the indication for you that you're putting together the Eightfold Path well. But in terms of how to practice right concentration, he talks about this in other parts of his teachings. So that's what I'm going to share with you, is how to practice right concentration. The way you practice right concentration is you need to develop a meditation practice, and you need to practice singleness of mind in your day-to-day life. Your meditation practice is going to be breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. We're going to talk about these in the afternoon after lunch. You would like to gradually build up to 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes. It can take you 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to this. This can sound like a lot, but if you look at your life, there's probably some unbeneficial things you're doing right now that you could scale back and you would have more time. Like, for example, if you're just endlessly searching social media and scrolling, or if you're endlessly watching YouTube videos, you could probably scale that stuff back a little bit and you'll have more time for meditation, right? So you'd like to build up your meditation practice. And I'm going to go into detail about this afternoon so you can understand this. Then there's practicing singleness of mind. Singleness of mind is where you're doing just one thing at a time. You might have been taught to multitask. Sometimes this is what people teach you. You're not really multitasking. It's physically impossible for your mind to do more than one thing at a time. What you're really doing is you're doing one thing for like 3 to 5 seconds, and then you're rapidly cycling to another thing for like 8 seconds, and then you're rapidly cycling to something else for 10 seconds. So if you're talking on the phone, you're watching TV, and you're eating a sandwich, you're not actually doing all 3 of those things at one time. You're actually talking on the phone a little bit. You're watching TV for a little bit. You're eating your sandwich a little bit. That's why when you get off the phone, you can't even remember what it is that you actually talked about. And you might have said something that was unwise, and you think you're saving yourself time. You think that you're actually being more productive, where in reality, this conversation that could have been 10 or 15 minutes, it was like 45 minutes or an hour. So it's actually wasting time. And now you said things that you shouldn't have said. And now you got to call that person back and be like, hey, I'm sorry. I apologize. I shouldn't have said that. Right? Or you might have agreed to things to this person that now you got to call them back and be like, hey, I know I was supposed to do something for you. What was that I was supposed to do? I really forget, so you're actually spending more time and you didn't really benefit from the TV program, and you might have a stomach ache from eating the sandwich. And now you got to lay down for 30 minutes and kind of get over the stomach ache. So you actually wasted more time, but the mind's lack of wisdom thinks that somehow you're being more beneficial and you're being more productive. It's kind of like a racehorse. If you've ever been to a racetrack where they have horses, they will race around the racetrack. And then when they go to the barn, they can't calm down. They're hyped up. This is why if you go to work for 8 or 10 or 12 hours a day and you're racing around the racetrack, when you go home, it's really hard to relax because your mind's all hyped up. Right? So you would like to do just one thing at a time. Just focus on one thing. This is what's going to hone your mind to be really focused and concentrated. So for example, if you're washing dishes and you notice your mind's wandering, well, if you allow that to happen, next thing you know, you cut your hand and now you got to go to the hospital and get stitches, right? And now this actually takes you more time. Instead, just focus on washing dishes. If your mind's wandering, cut that off and come back to whatever it is. Apply right effort. That's where your right mindfulness comes in. You watch over your mind. And if you're not practicing singleness of mind, you cut it off and come back. If you're in a business meeting and your boss is up there talking and you're thinking about going to Thailand and you're just like, oh man, I can't wait to get out of here. 3 more months and I'm in Thailand, man. I just can't wait, right? Instead, cut that off. Come back to the business meeting because you've got to handle that right there in the business meeting. If you're at a temple and you're listening to a Buddhist teacher teaching and you look at the clock and it's like, wow, it's almost lunchtime. I'm going to be eating lunch soon. Man, I can't wait to get to that mango and sticky rice. He's been talking about that all morning, right? And now you see your mind's like wandering to the mango and sticky rice. You cut that off and you're like, no, I need to focus on this conversation that the teacher's talking and teaching about the Eightfold Path, right? So you need to practice that singleness of mind. The way that I think about it is that if you had a piece of wood in a steel rod and you're dragging that steel rod back and forth over the wood, at the beginning, it's going to bounce around a lot because there's no groove there, right? But if you grind that steel rod enough back and forth, you're going to get a nice groove going in the wood. And when it pops out, you're going to notice that. And then you bring it right back, right? But if you drag that steel rod back and forth enough, you're going to get such a deep groove that it never pops out, that it's impossible. So that's what you're doing with your mind, is wherever you see your mind bouncing around, you cut it off and you come back. And now if you do that enough, you're going to get such focus and such concentration. Your mind's just always going to be focused and concentrated. It's not going to bounce out. So this is how you train it to have singleness of mind. Okay, so this right concentration is developing a meditation practice and having singleness of mind in your day-to-day life. Okay. So now, just to summarize the mental discipline section, there's right effort, where you're taking the initiative to eliminate unwholesome aspects of the mind and to cultivate wholesome qualities in the mind. You're going to need to apply the effort to do this. Eliminate the unwholesome and bring in the wholesome. Then you're going to need to practice right mindfulness, where you have awareness of the mind, awareness of your thoughts, your ideas, your feelings, things like this. But more specifically, those 4 foundations of mindfulness, where you have awareness of the bodily sensations, that early warning system alerting you that you're about to get angry, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. This is developed over time. Then you're going to need to have right concentration, where you practice meditation and singleness of mind. And we're going to talk about meditation this afternoon. And then you like to practice singleness of mind in all situations. Wherever you see your mind's not doing that, cut that off. Bring your mind back to whatever it is that you're focused on and do that one thing. And then when you're done, switch to the other thing. Okay. So any questions on this mental discipline section or any of the other aspects of the path? No questions? Okay. So it's basically 10 minutes to 12. I think this is the first time that I've ever ended this. Usually this goes up to about 12:30. So you guys are actually going to get a full hour and a half lunch here. We can actually take an hour and 40 minutes because I'm going to come back at 1:30 and start teaching you guys about meditation. So Thank you guys for your interest to learn the teachings of the Buddha. This is something that you're going to need to revisit multiple times, right? That's why you saw some of the students that were coming in. They've been studying with me before. They were getting a refresher. And then once they got their refresh, they kind of left, right? So you'll probably need to learn this 6, 8 different times. There's actually a study guide on our website that I put a study guide there that you can actually study to be able to commit it to your memory, because you're going to need to memorize this in order to be able to practice it. If you notice, I'll be able to explain to you the entire Eightfold Path without even looking at the slides, right? Right speech, speaking, eliminating lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. You're going to need to know that cold. What are the 5 factors of well-spoken speech? Speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. You're going to need to have that ingrained in your mind. So if you go to our website and you go to free books, down towards the middle, you're going to see the study guide there, and you can download it for free and you can study. And sometimes what students like to do is after they study for a while, then they sit down with me and they like teach it to me. And then where I hear that they're off, then I can help them. So this will give you the confidence that you've actually memorized it, because you're not going to be able to practice it without memorizing it. This is one of the only teachings that you're going to need to actually memorize in order to get to enlightenment. So I suggest you start early and you get your arms around this and start studying it to be able to commit it to your memory and then revisit it. I've got videos, I've got podcasts, I've got books, audiobooks. You can get personal guidance, many different ways for you guys to be able to learn this. Okay, so enjoy your lunch. And when we come back at 1:30, I'm going to teach you all the ins and outs of breathing mindfulness meditation so you can build up your practice with that. So take care, and we'll perhaps see you after lunch. Okay?